if this space can benefit me too. Like, why am I doing the thing that I'm doing, right? Asking yourself that why. So checking your inventory, seeing what your needs are, asking yourself that why when you get ready to do something, like why are you doing it? And then the last one is obeying your yes and obeying your no. Like, whatever it is, if it was when somebody asked you to do something and that knee-jerk reaction was yes in the first time, or the knee-jerk reaction was no in the first time, obey that no, obey that yes. We sometimes like play this whole thing in our brain where we dress up the thing, like romanticize whatever the circumstance is.
What's up, people? We're back here with Thursday with a therapist, and I am Antoine, and I have with me Shekinah Lee.
Hello.
Today, I want to talk about boundaries. You know, it's so important to have them. When I think about even, I'm going to go all the way left, and then we'll bring it back to the middle here. But even when I think about our relationship with God, it's important that we understand how to even operate and exist within that relationship. And so from that, God has these laws or these boundaries that he set for us. Hey, something as simple as thou shalt not have another God before me. Don't take my name in vain. These type of boundaries that say, hey, if you're going to be in relationship and covenant with me, it's important that you know how to exist in that space. And so even thinking about that, how does that, even go into our personal relationships, like the subject of boundaries and why it's important?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think a lot of times people think that boundaries are like for you or supposed to be like in respect of you or like keeping you in a certain way. But the real thing is that boundaries are for you and the other person to show up in the way that you should. You don't want to go into a relationship, friendship, or anything like that without clear understanding of how you want to be treated. Boundaries are like the instruction manual, if you will, for you and the person that you're in a relationship with, or friendship with, or work, and things like that. And those boundaries allow for the relationship to flourish in a way that is respectful and helpful for both parties. But we can't get to that point unless we establish and understand what boundaries are supposed to be and what they're supposed to look like.
Yeah. So it's probably true then that boundaries are not just these hard and fast rules, but more so like agents of protection.
Right.
They're protecting the relationship that you're existing within. What does a relationship look like without boundaries?
It breeds and could have the potential to breed all types of stuff like narcissism, pessimistic situations where people are like tearing each other down, looking at each other through a terrible lens. They can be codependent, they can be enmeshed, they can have all type of like avoidance and terrible attachment styles and all types of stuff. The list can go on and on if we don't get a chance to establish what those boundaries are supposed to be looking like within our relationships with people.
Now we're gonna have to break some of those down. So narcissism, codependency, like for the person that doesn't know what that phrase is, like what is...
Okay, we're talking about someone that might be or might have, and it's okay. I don't even want to. Let's say it's like this. For the sake of the fact that people like these are buzzwords, and these are what people like to use as like social media posts and stuff like that. So for the sake of that, I'm going to remove those from my thought process as relates to explaining what's going on. But I will say that you can get into situations that where you or the other person can be the manipulator or can be easily manipulated if you are not careful about what type of boundaries you're setting. You or the other person can be in a situation where you become like super dependent on them to provide you with something, and then becoming dependent on you to provide them with something, whether that be like care, support, love, or financial support. All these things come from people not being able to set up boundaries. For example, let's say if you had a partner and your partner hits you up and was like, hey, I'm behind on my rent this month. I need like $500, right? And so you give them that money this month. But then again, because you gave them the money January, then February come around, same thing. Hey, I'm late on my rent, I need $500. You give it to them again. And that process continues every month. Now, what you just developed is a codependent pattern where this person is saying, well, this is a dependent pattern where they're saying that they'll give you this money every month. But for you, how it becomes codependent is this idea like, okay, well, I'm going to give you this money, but then I need you to come over and do this, that, and third, or I need you to come and I need us to like be able to do this or that. Or you might look to them for the person that gives you some type of like mental solace or like peace and stuff like that. Instead of you actually going to a therapist, you go to them. So that relationship becomes that way. And so when you're not careful, that's a rough example, but if you're not careful, that's what ends up happening. You end up being in situations with people where like there is no true sincere reciprocity because there's no true sincere boundaries put in place, and I'm not able to after a while communicate it, because after a while they're gonna get used to the fact that you've been doing this every month. So where is this an issue now? Now I got to go through this whole process of trying to explain to you that this is a problem because of A, B, and C, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Now I could see somebody in that situation, who would be like, hey, if this is the dynamic that I'm used to in our relationship, like
Yeah.
that the dependency role or whatnot. But then that shift happens, like having that fear of approaching that person with the conversation of like, hey man, this isn't working, or
Yeah.
this will not be sustainable. So how do you fortify yourself to have that conversation when,
Yeah, okay,
pattern has
great
been
point.
set?
So first of all, clarity. You need to be clear about what your desires are, what you want and don't want in this situation. Second of all, check yourself. Check yourself in the sense of making sure that you're not angry, upset, or bothered when you're about to have this conversation. Make it as objective as possible and make it about this current situation, like what you want now versus going forward, right? Third of all, when you get into the conversation, be clear and concise about what it is that you're wanting from the person. Being clear helps you to be able to avoid like any fogs or any like back and forth, or like I didn't say this or did say that. No, I did, and I know I did because I was clear in saying this, and helping you with clarity, because sometimes when we're getting nervous, it's hard for us to kind of explain certain things. So helping us with the clarity piece can be you writing down what you want to what you want to share in the conversation, or you going over your points before you get ready to have the conversation. All those things aid in us communicating what we need. And then lastly, being okay with them not agreeing but understanding is what we're looking for. They don't have to agree with whatever it is, what boundary you put in place and stuff like that, but they need to understand that it's a boundary. They may feel a way about it. Who cares? This is for you, and this is for them to have a productive relationship that doesn't make you feel burnt out or worn out or taken advantage of, and vice versa.
All right, so that person that has that fear,
Yeah.
they're approaching whoever's the second, third party, whoever. They're approaching that person, and it's like, okay, I'm not used to having this conversation, and that fear potentially drives them away from that conversation. Would you encourage them to still go through the conversation because it builds up the reps to have the ability to do that in the future?
Okay, clarity. You're saying like if the other person, if I'm having an issue and I'm going to this person, they don't want to have a conversation with me about the issue at the time. What am I supposed to do? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay, so if they don't want to have the conversation, that's not up to you. You see what I'm saying? You can still hold whatever boundary you're holding, but you're trying to communicate what you need, and that's it. That's all
Yeah.
you can do. I think sometimes we think we have a lot more control than we do on other situations, but we do have influence. You're always teaching somebody how to treat you. Always teaching them.
Yeah.
So if you're setting the standard of like we can go however long without having a conversation about something and act like it didn't exist, then that's going to be the expectation that they can act like that it doesn't exist. But if you set the standard that says like, okay, but we need to talk about this, and you make that clear, like, no, I don't want to do this, that, and third until we talk about this, or I'm not ready to address this, that, and third until we talk about this part. That helps set that standard for that other person, and it makes them take your boundary that you set seriously.
Yeah. So the work of boundaries. I hear a lot of clarity. I hear practice. I hear even showing up and being persistent in your communication. How do we build that consistency structure of like, this is something that I do daily? Because I can see someone, dealing with that one-off situation and then just being like, okay, that was too anxious for me. I was too anxious in that moment. This ain't for me. And then kind of go back into that closet of hiding. So how do we consistently show up?
Well, if you are a people pleaser at nature, and that's not to say that everybody that struggles with boundaries is, but a lot of us, more real than not, are kind of groomed to just say okay to stuff. You see what I'm saying? Or to try to keep peace or to avoid conflicts, right? We get intimidated by conflict. We feel like conflict is a place of like uncomfortability for us. And so since it's so uncomfortable, I don't want to do it. I'm gonna stay away from it.
Yeah.
And that might not be the thing that's the safest or the best for us in the long run. So
That's good.
what has to happen is we have to like again identify, take inventory, like what's most important to me right now, but then realize that it's a muscle. Just like how when you go to the gym the first time you try to bench press whatever you're gonna bench press, you might need some extra help, some assistance. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
But then after a while, once you start to get in the habit of it, okay, this is a little bit easier. I think I would start with the 10s. Okay, now I can do 15. Okay, now I can do 20. You see what I'm saying? It's situation by situation. You're learning how to do that. And a bigger thing about it too is like you have to learn how to trust yourself in that way too. My dad used to say this thing all the time. And it was that trust is built situation by situation. And it stuck with me so much because I thought he was, at the time, I was like, I think my phone got taken or something like that, ridiculous. But my dad was trying to show me that I'm setting boundaries in accordance to how much I can trust you. And the situation is only going to change, right? And the boundaries that I'm setting are only going to take a shift if you're showing me that I can trust you with this part of it. Now, if we're thinking about it in the context of like having conversation and like getting into conflict with someone, right? You have a relationship with this person, you trust them to a certain extent because you have a relationship with this person, right? If we're talking about what it looks like to expand the boundaries of our relationship and push past barriers, it's gonna come from the fact that I know that I can trust you in this space because you respected my boundary before. So if you want the relationship to continue to grow, it's gonna be on the other side of that conflict. It's gonna be on the other side of that boundary because it'll be another place where you were able to be authentic and true to who you actually are and honest with yourself about who you are. So the other person on the other side can say, okay, like I can hold space for this person's honest opinion about this thing. They don't agree with this thing that I do. I can make a shift for that. And it's invigorating, it's freeing, it's enlightening, it's helpful because it shows you now that, okay, I can trust myself and them with my no's. I can trust them with my, okay, I don't want to do this today. I can trust them with my, I don't like it when you do that. And I know that their love for me is so unconditional and has like some type of reservoir for that too. It has space for that too, for the things that we don't agree on all the time.
Yeah. What are some tools to get better with creating boundaries?
Okay, so number one, like I said, the exercising it one day at a time, honoring yourself always, so checking in with yourself, and then asking yourself, like, when you're getting ready to do something, when you answer the phone call when somebody calls, or when you go jump to whatever somebody asks, why am I doing what I'm doing, right? Like, what is the purpose of it? It might be is it peer pressure? Is it I want to grow a better relationship with this person? Is it I want to see if this space can benefit me too? Like, why am I doing the thing that I'm doing, right? Asking yourself that why. So checking inventory, seeing what your needs are, asking yourself that why when you get ready to do something, like why are you doing it? And then the last one is obeying your yes and obeying your no. Like whatever it is, if it was when somebody asked you to do something and that knee-jerk reaction was yes in the first time or the knee-jerk reaction was no in the first time, obey that no, obey that yes. We sometimes like play this whole thing in our brain where we dress up the thing, like romanticize whatever the circumstance is. Like, first it's no, but then no, but maybe I'll be able to do this, and maybe if I would have did this and this, and maybe da da da. No, because your no was your no was your no. You see what I'm saying? And your yes is your yes. That's your yes.
Yeah.
So when we honor those things, that can help us get to that point. And then lastly, don't be so afraid of missing out on something that you like kind of like sacrifice yourself to be a part. Like no, yeah, those are my 4.
That's so good. It made me think though, are there categories where we have, what we would call hard boundaries and even soft boundaries?
Yeah.
Like, in some scenarios, the no is absolutely the no, and that's what it is. But then there are some scenarios where it may be, hey, that my yes or my no may be conditional upon, what's going on in my life. Maybe I can't commit to this thing right now, but in 2 weeks from now, I might have a yes. Is that, safe to say?
So I think no's are no's and yeses are yeses regardless. But I think that there's, again, with that whole idea about what does it look like to stretch within that no. You see what I'm saying? Like your no might have a timestamp attached to it.
Gotcha.
Or your no, even when we're talking about little kids, like, can you have candy? No, not until after dinner. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, it's not that my no is like a no never. My no, it's not an absolute. Because we don't use those. Like, even in therapy, we talk about, or counseling, we talk about in general, the absolutes, like never and always. You don't want to use those because they're too finite.
Right.
But when we're talking about boundaries that you're setting with the person, there's like, you decide for yourself it's almost like this. If you think of, and I got this initial analogy from this guy named Darius Daniels. He has this book called Relational Intelligence, and it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
So in the book, he talks about the different variations of relationships and things like that. And one thing specifically, I imagine it like this in my brain, and I don't know if he like literally said this, but if you think of yourself as like several bullseyes, right, and you think of yourself as at the center of it, you're the person in the middle. Every different layer of that bullseye is a level of relationship with the person. So you might have your level 2, your level 1 people who are this close to you. They're your confidants. You tell them everything and stuff like that. Then you might have like your level 2 people. They cool. We have good conversation every now and then, but I ain't gonna tell you if I'm locked up or something like that, or some ridiculous happened.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do that. Like you're not the person I call with the bail money. That's not what we do.
Yeah,
right.
for sure.
So there's that level. But then you might have like your 5 who are these people, like you see them on Facebook every now and again, you comment on their stuff or something like that. You have a relationship with them in passing. They might have been an old classmate or friend, but you understanding those different levels helps you initiate those different boundaries, and everybody gets another set based off of what, it's almost like they're packages based off of what level they're on.
Yeah.
And then once we kind of establish those packages, we can establish what boundaries we keep and how long we keep them. A person that was at level 5 can move to level 1. A person that was at level 1 can move to level 5. They don't have to be so finite, but they can, your yeses can be yeses and your no's can be no's until the time shows that I can do something differently.
You know, that statement, I'm going back to something you said earlier, trust is earned. I think you said in stages. Or
Situation by situation.
Situation by situation. So how do we even frame the idea of like, all right, that trust has now been broken and we have to rebuild that? Because I think on some sides of that you have people who would have their agenda and it's like, I want to get back to level 1 again. You know, and then there are people who are at level 5 now that you've put at level 5, and you're like, I'm open to you getting back to level 1, but it's not on your timeline.
Yeah.
You know,
So that's the boundary right there, the process, when they do what they do, when that happens. But then in addition to that, there's the idea of you establishing for yourself what the definition of those things are. I like to think of, in my theory, it's a twofold thing. So what you're talking about are ruptures and repairs. There's sometimes ruptures in relationships, right, that are going to require repair, but all type of communication has to happen. All type of like in-depth work has to happen. Almost a reference that you made earlier about a wound, right? When someone does something like a scar or something like that, it's gonna be painful, but you gotta get in there and do their work, clean that thing out. You see what I'm saying? And then you can start to bandage it, and then it can start to heal. My Dominique with Yellowbird, she makes reference to that often. But when we're talking about the idea of repairing something and rebuilding it, it's gonna come only if you're open to it and only at your pace, and you establish that, and that is the boundary. You being able to say, like, you know, it's almost like, you know, when you meet somebody for the first time, and sometimes you have like immediate like, oh man, something about your spirit, like we click tight, boom, boom, right?
For sure.
And then there's some people who you're like, I don't know, like let me take some time to get to know you, right? And so that difference, that like variation is what allows you to be able to like say, okay, there's something, I don't know what it is, but there's something that won't let me bring you all the way in here. So I'm going to allow you to work your way this way. And you can establish what that is. My therapist does this thing, what I think is awesome. And she says you hold all relationships with an open hand, right? And in the context of your spiritual life, you allow for, people can come in, you hold your hand just like this. And if you hold your hand like this, stuff can land in your hand, stuff can go through the fingers, and stuff can like completely miss you. But you hold it always with an open hand. And you allow yourself the opportunity for God to come and do whatever he's going to do with whatever that relationship is. But you stay at a place of like a support, service, awareness. I'm not trying to control it. And that's the issue that a lot of people think. People think that boundaries equal control of the relationship. They do not. Boundaries equal an opportunity for me to protect myself while I see how this relationship decides to grow.
Gotcha. That's so good. As we think about the subject of boundaries, and that relates, and relating that subject even to faith, how do we properly hold space for, because guarding our heart as we're engaging in life with people? Because I think what I've seen in ministry is we allow people sometimes too quickly into those intimate spaces. And I've used the example of a house. You don't let everybody come into your bedroom. Like, you maybe can sit on the sofa out in the front room, but you don't let everybody go into those intimate spaces. And so those people that have that access too soon, like, and now we're in that repairing stage. How do you guard your heart? Because it's easy to become, calloused.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
you don't. It's not your responsibility to guard it.
Mm-hmm.
You give it to God.
That's so
And you
good.
let him guard it.
That's good.
See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You let them go through God, and that's how you get to me. And in addition to that, you identify the fruit. You know a man by his fruit, right? Pay attention. I can't, and this is a gift and a curse, honestly. But I struggle taking people seriously unless I see the fruit of what you're saying.
That's
if you
good.
say this, you say that you're this, where's the fruit? If you say that you do this, where's the fruit? If you say you operate off this way, where's the fruit? If you're saying this is a lifestyle, where's the fruit? And I know a person every day, all day by their fruit, and I operate off that principle for myself.
Sure.
The reason why I'm so ambitious, I think, is because of that fact. Like, I got to make sure that my fruit is aligning with all these things that I say that I am, who I said God is to me, and what that is. And it's almost like that whole thing. God even talks about like testing him and seeing and see. You see what I'm
That's
saying?
good.
Like, because of the fact that you're gonna know me by my fruit, right? And so if God even does that, right? And if I'm operating off that principle for myself, then best believe whoever coming around, that's what you say? Okay, great. Where's the fruit?
That's good.
And after that, I'll know. You hear all the time, like if they talk about you if they're talking about other people to you, then they probably talking about you too. That same thing. If whatever they're doing, whatever you're watching, whatever you're seeing, the fruit is always going to speak. And in the same way, excellence speaks that way, right? Good stewardship speaks that way. Integrity speaks that way. It even goes before the person shows up. There's certain people where you know them not because of like you've met them or anything like that, but because of the high receipts, that you've been able to see of this person.
Yeah.
You can always know somebody by their fruit. So before you go and give them all of yourself and give them so much of your time and your energy, you check those fruits first. And then after you check the fruit yourself with your carnal mind, with this space, you check with God to check it with the spiritual mind. Like, hey, this is, who's in my space. They want to work, or they want to be in my space with me, or they want to be around, or whatever the case. Help me filter this so I can know what's up.
That's so good.
What is my role that I'm supposed to play in this space? It's not up to you. And I think there's so much stuff. They talk about, God talks about, or Paul was talking about how it's like in his weakness that God's made strong, right? And it's like, or in our weakness that God makes strong. If the weakness is people for you, if it's people pleasing, if it's like, being in places where you've been hurt by people, you don't trust people, if that's the weakness, let God be strong in it then. Let him show up and fill up that space, fill up that gap, bridge that gap, so you don't have to be the person responsible for trying to make sure that you don't ever get hurt again, because that's unrealistic, it's unfair, and it's impossible.
Yeah.
Your boundaries are so that you implement these things that God's teaching you about the principles of how you should be in relationship. That's what those boundaries are for.
That's good. I'm thinking because I think that's helpful for a lot of people that's listening. I think that's going to shore up some spaces, because that is something that if you look at social media,
Yeah.
and you see the conversations that's happening, it's like, man, healing has to take place.
Yeah.
There has to be space for healing, because conversations of what we're looking for
Yeah.
and what we expect, or even the conversations of high value people, and it's just like, man, my heart is, I want to see healing take place, because if we don't have that healing, we're just spewing those old wounds on people. And that's not a recipe for success. And so even speaking about that, how would you speak to some of the conversations that's just floating there? We're eating daily because we're scrolling and we're consuming.
So I think what you said about the feed, if you think of it like your news, everything, the inventory around that is a feed. It's that. That's what it is. I use social media for the purpose of building my business and my brand and things like that, and for the purpose of like educating myself on certain things. But I'm very intentional about who I follow. I'm very intentional about what I watch. I'm very intentional about all those things. When I was like 17 years old, one of the youth pastors at my church, her name was now Miss Tamika Bell, but she talked about this thing about gates, and baby, it blew me. And ever since then, that was it. But she talks about the fact that these are your ears, your eyes, your mouth, your hands, all those are gates, right? And at the end of the day, when you're talking about what you're doing and what that looks like, you gotta watch your gates. Your protection that you're talking about, you're looking for, and like the process, how toxic it is, and things like that. It is. I mean, it has all types of. We can go on and on about that, but the reality is, what are you choosing to listen to? What are you feeding your spirit with? When you wake up in the morning, what are you agreeing with your words, with your mouth, right? What does your circle agree with? What spaces are you in that are reaffirming these things that you're saying? And if you're not checking that, then you messing yourself up.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that's your responsibility. You need to be able to look through everything that you're saying, like, who am I following? What am I listening to? Who am I talking to? And does it align with the person that I know God called me to be and what I'm supposed to be doing? And if it don't, it got to sit down. It has to go over there. It's been like I can't even tell you how many times I do this, but there's like whole entire months where I literally won't get on social media for no other reason but because of the fact that what I'm seeing is doing something that I don't like to me, so I gotta stop. There's TV shows I don't watch, music I don't listen to, people I don't talk to. Even like at the being in a therapist role, there's so much that's getting pulled from you that literally at the end of the day, I can only talk to certain people. I won't call, I won't text, and it won't be on purpose. It won't be out of like it will be on purpose, but it won't be out of any malicious intent. But it's literally because my spirit can't afford to talk to you today. My spirit can afford to talk to you on Sunday when I don't have any clients, or Monday when I don't have any clients. But this Tuesday through Saturday, this is for them, and I have to be in a place of service. So if you're thinking about it in that regard, you got to check that stuff first. It don't matter what they say. They could say all type of stuff. That doesn't matter because that's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is make sure that you are a light, and the light that you are going to bring is only from you being transformed from the inside out. We're the light of this world, right? We're the salt of the earth. And salt is so interesting or amazing because you sprinkle a little bit and it changes the whole flavor of the whole entire thing. But it's not that the water takes on the flavor of the salt. And I think too much of this has been us allowing it to water us down to where it's overcoming the flavor of the salt. So if you are allowing yourself to do I'm with you. If you're allowing yourself to do what you need to do and rebuild yourself and take care of yourself, it's not going to matter what they say or do or don't do because you're doing the work to protect yourself. That does not matter. What type of relationships do you want to have? What type of friendships do you want? What type of person do you want to be? How does that align with God's stuff? You put that together and that's it.
Yeah. So I think from the episodes we've done so far, I think you would say take inventory.
Yeah.
Yeah. Take inventory of the relationships that you have currently.
Yeah.
And then also assess who you want to be.
Yeah.
And see if there's alignment between the two.
Yeah.
Am I right? Okay. Any other practical tips you would give to the people that are listening?
I think that when we're talking about this idea of boundaries, I think the main thing, if you don't hear anything else I say, especially as relates to spiritual context, it's not up to you to do this by yourself. You be guided by the Holy Spirit as it relates to who you're in relationship with and who your friendships with and who you talk to, what boundaries you need to set. You decide that through God. You put yourself in commitment with God to do that. Let Him decide because He knows all stuff. Like, it's not on you. It's not on you. And I think that as soon as you kind of release that pressure, you can just be. You can be free, fully yourself, not being afraid of somebody hurting you, not being afraid of this not working out, not being afraid of you not being successful. You're letting God do the full work that He's meant to do, which is for you to live a happy, successful life for joy to the overflow. You know, that's the life that you're meant to have. And it's not going to happen unless you get in partnership with somebody that can be that filter for you and help you inspect the fruit and help you see what's up so that you can show up the way you need to.
That's good. How can the people connect with you?
Hi. Okay, so Shekinah, aka the Purpose Therapist. You can find me on Instagram at THEPURPOSED and then on Instagram also there's Purpose Joy, PURPOSEDJOY, and then there's the website is purposejoy.org. Our YouTube page is Purpose Joy. And then if you want to email me, you can email me at shekinahjoy@purposejoy.org.
Awesome. Listen, this has been another episode of Thursday with a Therapist. And as always, get the help you need. I'll see you on next week.
Bye.
Peace.